What's up, Rebel and Flo? I'm here.
Woohoo! He's here. He's live in the house. How you doing, mate? Okay.
Yeah, all good. Good to see you guys.
Amazing. Good to see you as well. What I'm going to do, Dennis, I'm going to do the whole. I'm going to do the block height intro, and then we'll get into it, mate. Is that good?
Love it. Yeah, I'm here for it.
Thanks, mate. Just check, Flo. Are you good? Is because we've had some issues.
Hi, yeah, as always, but now I'm good. How are you guys?
Great. Okay. Good. Really good. All right. It's that time of the week. The block height is 859572. You're listening to the one and only Art of Freedom. This is the premier and only Bitcoin art podcast or spaces that is on the internet. So welcome, and it's a joy to be here every Monday night, giving you the stories and the inspirations behind artists, curators, collectors, innovators in the Bitcoin culture space. My name is Rebel Money, and I'm joined with the one and only Florencia. How you doing, Flo?
Hey, Rebel. I'm doing very good. Just today I was trying new materials, trying to do some new art pieces. So that was a lovely way to start the weekend. The week. How are you?
Really good, really busy, head down making art. I've realised this week, in the last week, I have no art, so I need to make some, which is lovely. And been experimenting with some magnets this week, so that's my thing. So I've been having fun with that. Yeah, and they're interesting things to play around with. So yeah, it's been a lovely week, and I'm off next week. So going out with a bang this week, and excited to have our guest on the show. So how do I introduce this guy? He's he, the curator of Bitcoin magazine art gallery, but he's more than that. He's a voice in the space. He's an artist, a fellow artist, whose work is awesome, and I've done so many conversations and interesting, not in person, kind of just off the cuff, but also on podcasts as well. Bitcoin Magazine. I'd like to welcome Mr. Dennis. I'm going to say Koch Dennis because that's the Welsh way of saying it. It also means Red Dennis, says Koch, which sounds like some kind of yeah, like berserker or something like that, some warlord. But I'm going to go with it. But is it Koch? Is it? Is
Well,
that
look, that is the appropriate, like, German sort of Scandinavian pronunciation. I think my family has always said cook, but there's like a bevy of pronunciations. Like, honestly, that's a conversation within and of itself because it's also been brutally mispronounced in like very demoralizing ways over time. So your pronunciation is much better than what some could say.
Thank you, mate. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with it now. You'll forever be known as the Red Dennis. You know, I might save you as my contact details in my phone as the Red Dennis. So, but thank you very much for coming on the show. Dennis, where do we start? I just think if you can give a quick introduction to anyone who's listening as to kind of, I've given a very brief one there, but who you are, what you do, and how you, yeah, let's just start with that, and then we'll go into more depth then.
Sure. And, obviously, thank you so much for both of you having me. I've really enjoyed listening to your conversations. I don't always make them in real time, but I'm always listening to them afterwards. And I've learned a lot about artists that have participated in our events from your conversations. So thank you guys for doing this. I really appreciate it. But yeah, my name is Dennis. What can I say? I do wear a couple different hats. Producing conference events for the Bitcoin conference, a bevy of like sort of art related activations and ways in which artists get involved. I think the creative path runs parallel to the Bitcoin path, and any way we can or create a opportunity for an artist or a creative to participate in our events is something that we take seriously and we're really working towards. But yeah, personally, I grew up in the Midwest. I'm old enough that I lived a very different life than the kids these days. I lived out, I rode my bike outside all day and came back later and just had a lot of time living free and experiencing time differently, which, the concept of time is something that really is integral to the Bitcoin experience. So, but yeah, I was dumb enough to skip graduate school and jump straight into working in real life art world setting. Um, uh, my wife changed the course of my life and led me to Los Angeles, where I worked in several major art galleries and museums, and really, I think got to see behind the curtain relatively young and learn about sort of real way business operates and sort of this intersection point between like high finance and art. And although I was somewhat naive and like, totally just a noob, it's really taught me a bunch of life lessons that I've carried on, and I just really thankful for the experience that I had during those years in LA. And then, but I started my wife and I have a family. We took our kids elsewhere. We didn't want to raise them there, and luckily stumbled into some connections that led me to working here. And it's, I feel a sense of joy. It's rare that you find something that fits your skill set, and just trusting the sort of things that led you to the place that you are. So I'm pretty happy to be here.
Well, and I'm for one personally, I'm happy you are here, Dennis, and many artists in the space are as well. I can speak personally. Very grateful for you giving me the first kind of opportunities to exhibit some of my work, which has gone on now to consume most of my being. Which thank you very much for that. So I really appreciate that. But giving me somewhere to kind of have an outlet and taking a chance as well on a relatively unknown artist. So I appreciate that. But I personally have not. I've come from the traditional art world, and you've in our talks in the past have come from you've got some crazy stories that I've only probably scratched the surface on. So can you just describe the kind of what you did in the traditional art world and how that kind of led you to this path of discovering Bitcoin and then trying to almost start something, a new kind of art culture in Bitcoin?
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, I just want to say I noticed that Rax is in this space as well, and he's somebody I've chatted to as well, and also, and I think what I'm going to say here is like there are these alternate paths to getting to where you want to go that you maybe are lucky enough to stumble through, and I feel like that's what my story is. Like my wife and I met on a bike ride across the state of Iowa, this 600-mile bike ride, and she like convinced me to move to LA, and I ended up working. I worked at a. This is a life lesson. Like I worked for free at a nonprofit space that quickly showed to others that I could be valuable in a paid way. So I worked in this nonprofit art gallery, like on the Sunset Strip in in LA, and like it was like next to a stripper's clothes place, but it also was like one of a very famous LA art space. So like immediately I was just this, relatively farm kid, like learning and being in this like, really crazy environment at times. And so that was in and of itself like a lot of lessons. But yeah, worked for free at a nonprofit space, proved that like I was reliable, and that led to like a ton of other jobs at other art galleries installing. Quickly kind of lucked into working at Gagosian in Beverly Hills on their exhibitions, and moved up within that space over a number of years. And really just like, I think the biggest thing was like, really seeing how the real artwork world works. It's sort of parallels with banking industry, and like you know, a slew of almost like um, offensive or disgusting elements of both the banking world and the maybe larger fiat world were very present within the art world. It was frustrating. Look, it was amazing, but it also like I watched people's lives get ruined from a couple things. Like whether it's just drug environment or financial ruin. And I think that was interesting to see and learn about like how maybe, and no one ever says, hey, maybe we should change the money. Like that's just like no one even took that. I mean, maybe it was just early, but that I think seeing that made me, I always thought the artist's role was to be like looking in different directions and like looking into, almost taboo areas. And you learned that like questioning the economy or like the structures of finance is like one of those taboos that like no one wants to look at. And the traditional art is sort of having its own sort of uh, um, crisis about how to change with that changing environment right now. So I would say Bitcoin artists maybe have like a little bit of a advantage during this sort of time of crisis. So I know I'm spraying to a few different fields, but that was my experience.
When you say the art scene is going through or traditional art scene is going through a crisis at the moment, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Okay. So this sort of boom and bust cycle has occurred in the art world several times. And I happen to have been at Gagosian during the financial crisis of 2008. And so I saw one of these cycles before, and it really closely mirrors the what banking went through in terms of like large banks gobbling up smaller banks. And that same thing occurred within the art world, where large galleries poached mid-tier or lower tier galleries for their artists, and many art galleries went out of business. And that's happening again. And like sometimes I've seen recently where different art influencers, like, so I happen to be like uh sort of back channel friends with a woman who's like a kind of a big art personality, and she's in graduate school for finance. And there she's trying to have conversations about like inflation and things like that. And um it's just interesting to the questioning the money component is not something that's occurring. But yeah, so 2008 was a lot of lessons. Watched a lot of artists go through like some a lot of artists fall off. And uh, it's really tough to see. It's look, I know this audience knows it. It's very hard to make a living as an artist, like let alone in a situation where your money is losing value constantly. So yeah. I, I don't know if that answers your question, but I do think these cycles have occurred before, and starting to see that again. And yeah, it's you're I don't know if there's great solutions to some of these things, but yeah. What would be your take, Rebel? I need to hear somebody else's voice besides my own here.
That's fine. You can help me. It's fine. You know, this is what it is. It is a conversation. And Flo's here as well.
Yeah, please, Flo. Sorry.
So in when you're talking about now, this is fascinating. So you're talking kind of like in terms of galleries having boom and bust cycles, and when you have these bust cycles, then if I'm correct in this line of thinking, the big galleries actually absorb artists from medium and small galleries, and
Sure.
that kind of centralizes, if you want to call it that,
Yep.
the amount of artists that are in the space under these big galleries, and therefore the power then is in these big galleries that have the bigger artists, and then that makes it very difficult then for artists then to potentially look at different creative ways, or in because are the big galleries then determining how the artists direction and what they should
Oh
what
yeah.
they should draw from.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is I don't feel like it's traditional artwork really suffers from like diverse opinions because like the 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 um the the pressure to like make sustainable or make profitable works really funnels artists towards different types of ways of making art. So that's, I mean, I would say that I watched that happen a lot. And what else? Like just look, here's a pretty crazy example. So and I think this speaks towards the centralization element that we're talking about, and just like some of these like um, problems that emerge from that. So
We may have lost Dennis, or I might be lost.
oh, here. So
No,
I'm
I got it.
sorry. I may have muted accidentally for a second. Do you hear me now?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna give a weird example. Like so. Uh, eh, I think some of this centralization component and sort of funneling towards um, you know, singular entities. Um, like there was a collector that came quite frequently to Gagosian in LA, and he was I mean, essentially a Ukrainian oligarch. His name was Viktor Punchek, and he has his own museum in Ukraine. And I think like there there were rumors of whole other elements going on with his art collection, and so like art, I mean, I think this is just, I'm just only pointing towards like you know uh, an asset class that has been used to store wealth that is potential for uh, nefarious, or just sort of almost like, ultimately I think the incentives pushed major museums or galleries towards these types of uh, downfall type behavior. And I feel like I saw some of that in my time in LA.
So the this Victor, the person, I can't remember his surname there, sorry, but he was a large head of a large gallery, I'm assuming. And sorry,
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, I mean, there's I mean, I witnessed this in a couple ways. Like, there was another guy who owns a museum in Mexico, a major museum, and like one time when I went to his house to deliver some artwork, like there was just a scar-faced size pile of cocaine at his house. So it was just like it's these types of occurrences in LA that really shook my awareness of that the intersection point of like high finance and that art world. And hopefully we can build something that has different incentives. And I think that would be, that's my goal, and that's I think something that other people within this community believe as well.
Yeah, I think we have wondered about that so many times. It's like, can Bitcoin really fix the art scene? uh, it's hard to know, because from one side, I think it can, like, why, like, only thinking about, like, protecting yourself against inflation and all of that, it doesn't really make sense to buy art when you can buy Bitcoin. So I
Yeah.
think that changes the incentive people have, and we go back to something more like, I'm gonna get this because I really appreciate it, because it really connects with me, because I see something, other types of value that aren't necessarily monetary value. But yeah, I also see other stuff, like we will still see some, I don't know, art being used not only as I don't know, against this inflation or things like that, but you know this typical scheme that is like the company will buy art from, I don't know whose wife, and then she's like the wife
Yeah.
from a politician, and then they create this ONG thing of cultural stuff, and then they put the art there, and it's all like moving the money between them, skipping taxes and stuff like that. I don't know if we can. What's your thought on those things?
Well, yeah, and I mean, look, Flo, your point is your first part of your point is really important there. It's rather than art as an asset class for avoiding or storing money all the time, it is nice to connect with collectors that believe the ideas behind the artwork. Like, honestly, that seems like such a core thing to focus on. You wouldn't think that we would have to like argue for that, but yeah, I mean, like, whether it's art or U.S. housing, or like, you could argue that the situation has forced people into these sort of financial games to to protect their money in any way they can. So if we can pull some of those games out of the money system, and maybe perhaps spend a little bit more time focusing on what the artwork is about, that would be a tremendous retrace of the art world. But yeah, I am aware of what you're talking about in the second part there, in terms of like, I mean, there's tons of different tax avoidance games being played in the art world, and some of which I was too dumb to figure out when I was there. But yeah. And look, I, on one level, like, people should pay as little taxes as they can get away with. Like, I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and say that, like, the U.S. tax law is like a great thing. It's just like, if you have a tremendous amount of wealth, like that, you're incentivized to protect it and utilize these means of avoiding. And it's an unfair system to most of the populace.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Like, during our previous conversations, Dennis, with Pepinado, kind of delving into the world of traditional art, there's kind of a step-by-step process, which is step one: pick an artist. The work costs around about 10 grand. Get them to get 10 grand, then pay the appraiser, then, and to increase that value, increase the value
Yeah.
of the painting, then put it in your shiny gallery, wherever it might be. That and it goes for a certain amount, and then you donate it then to a museum, which then you can offset against your tax. So
Sure.
but the trick with that is that the average Joe cannot use, if you for better or worse, that method to actually lower their tax bill, so to speak. So it's definitely a pawn for the rich there, and powerful to actually use. With that, how do you see Bitcoin now, then, what mechanisms do you see Bitcoin art? Is it changing this? Is it through just cultural messaging, or is there any the underlying mechanics of Bitcoin that's helping, or you see a future in kind of changing this corrupt landscape?
Yeah, and I think you could approach this question in a number of ways, but I think the biggest thing is like, well, I don't know. I know I'm going to be super naive here and just say that like maybe it disincentivizes some of these behaviors. That's probably a naive take. But ultimately, like I think, uh, much like it reminds me of when I first came to work for the conference. I would say that like I realized that there was already a community of artists here making work, and they have relationships with collectors here. Those relationships with collectors allow for the extension of their art making and just like able to sustain a career or build a career. And now I think like we're starting to see whether it's additional events or additional platforms, like we're in a moment where we're seeing more opportunities for creative people within Bitcoin. And I know many artists even on this take advantage of this, but whether it's donation or incentive platforms like Geyser, like we're seeing more tools emerged, like, or even, you could, I know Nostr is tremendously in its infancy, but this notion that you could support an artist via Zaps is really interesting. I know it's going to take time, but yeah, I mean, but time is weird. Maybe things accelerate in a way that provides these opportunities to be meaningful for artists. But yeah, it's not. This is not an easy environment for a lot of people, and it's gonna be a challenge.
I think about that, what is really interesting is that even if we don't make like a huge sale or whatever we can do, if you're in a Bitcoin mindset, those collectors are like, whatever you can do now helps you in the future. It's like you have to have this low time preference kind of goals and all of that, but for example, for me now, is like the first people who believed in me and who bought art from me. These are the people that are helping me to keep creating today. And it's impressive how it doesn't mean that they had to buy at a huge price or whatever. It's just that you just have to like hodl and keep creating and be consistent, and then it's like you get rewarded by the good things and not rewarded by like just following others or bad things, bad behaviors. That I think.
Hey Flo, I love that you noted consistency there, because I really think that I've watched that pay off for a number of artists, and I do see that Marcus is in the audience here, and Marcus is a great example. I mean, just look at what he did for B24 in Nashville. He had an opportunity to do a mural that also crossed over into a record that he produced, and he had an opportunity to do a live performance that accompanied that record, and also a conference T-shirt, as well as his hand painted guitar that he crafted a great display for. So again, look, that's a great example of an artist that took his own language and expanded it to a variety of things that intersected with our event. And in general, I would say he is a perfect example of one of the things that is a goal for our conference, is to create both cross-conference opportunities for creatives to participate. I think Asanoa is another great example of that, who did his own merch part next to our store. Again, he's very consistent. that consistency is just so important, and it creates a room for me to feel comfortable to allow an artist to run with it. I mean, the same is true with Art of Freedom and Rebel leading the whale talk at our event, which I think was tremendously successful because not only did it just it was like a proof of concept where we should be doing this every day. Like, I mean, I think we could be doing that almost every day at the conference to allow different walk-through voices experience the art gallery. Like, that was really great. And, I think it bared out in the number of new bidders or buyers at the event, which is something that we've really been looking to improve. So that's one of those elements of our event that I was really proud of.
Yeah, I've been loving that. So the first time I saw Bitcoin conference gallery was in Miami 2022. And I think we have the whole community, the jobs everyone is doing, it has grown so much. And what I really love about this space is that I feel people are open to see other perspectives, to criticism, when it's of course constructive. I see this all the time, and that's why I feel like it keeps getting better and better. And this year was very, very beautiful to see that, and it was great. I was very how do you say, expectant, will the people come or not? This is too early. This is a good time because it's lower people, and to see that how it worked out, how Rebel managed the crew, how everyone was happy and talking to the artists that were there. It was a very beautiful experience. And yeah, it made me also very grateful, of course, to be there, but also very optimistic. There is so much more that we can keep doing, and we can keep improving and making this a whole experience for everyone. And about that, well, before I continue, everyone, if you guys want to ask a question, please do make the mic thing and join us. So I wanted to ask you, if you can, I don't know, share with us some things. Maybe there is no top secret, but it's something that might be coming. What are you guys thinking on the new gallery conference? Art shows that you're planning, and yeah, what you can share with us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we'll continue to do this pattern where our US event is a much larger display that provides opportunity for both new artists and artists that have been around for a long time to participate. I mean, I think I'm really proud of the number of people, or the people that contributed this year, because there was just such tight artwork to pull from this year. People really took their opportunity very seriously, and so yeah, we will continue to have these U.S. events that provide a slightly larger platform for a higher volume of artists. It's a challenge. There are budgetary concerns. There's just spatial concerns. It's not an easy thing to do, but that's something that we will continue to do. Our European event and our additional international events, there tend to be more focused, honed on a couple smaller ideas. I would like these to be opportunities for more of a solo presentation, for somebody to show a particular theme or idea that they're focused on. Really give it an opportunity. So I would put this out there to the audience. I'm constantly having conversations with artists about a more specific idea that they would like a slightly larger breadth of space to expand on. So if you have an idea like that you would like to discuss with me, I'm open to that. So yeah, for instance, our Amsterdam event will feature a smaller exhibition that's related to AI art. Obviously, look, I know it's almost ridiculous buzzword to throw in here, but like it really is something that both a lot of artists lean on, as well as is changing physical and digital art pretty dramatically. So that's something I'm doing in conjunction with Super Chief Gallery. Super Chief, pretty legendary in terms of digital art space. Um, Somebody I've known for a long time. I first sort of witnessed Super Chief in LA, and I was like, these guys are fucking barbarians. Like, what is the story with these people? And it's really interesting to see them have staying power and be around. So yeah, I think there are other galleries that we will collaborate with at our both our Abu Dhabi event as well as potentially Hong Kong. So I think that we'll see more of that. And then yeah, there will be both online auction opportunities as well as in-person auction opportunities at these events. But again, it's just going to be a little bit more tailored, a little bit more smaller. Um, there's a number of things brewing for Amsterdam. One additional item. I'm not going to blow the top on a few of these too early, but they should be coming out in the next week or so. One thing I've noticed one thing I'm working with the artist Satoshi Builds, who did live drawings of the speeches. If you haven't seen his work, I would encourage people to check it out. I've really loved what he's doing. It's both a sort of live document of the moment, as well as like a really great, just sort of tight mark making. I'm into it on a couple levels. But yeah, he will be having a slightly larger role in Amsterdam, and I just think it's really fun for the speakers, but also it's good artwork. So.
I'm interested, Dennis. We've with I wouldn't say it's like a controversy, because it's not, and it's definitely played out to be a bigger issue than it actually is. But where you kind of as a kind of curator, where are you with the kind of digital artwork, ordinals, etc., physical artwork? What's your stance on these pieces in terms of where do all of them belong in the Bitcoin community? Because some voices within our community are kind of disagree that ordinals are the way forward. Others indifferent. Others are very pro ordinal. So I'm just wondering what your viewpoint is. Sorry if that's a question that's putting you on the spot a little bit.
No. I think,
To
Rebel,
listen
that's
to your
that's
opinion.
a totally fair question. And here's what I would say. So first of all, I want to just take one step back, because I think it might be helpful to discuss what some of the forces that I think are brewing that will continue to make this be a topic of relevancy. So like and I'm going to refer to trad world stuff real quickly, just so like I can provide this context. So there is a long line of digital art history, and I think it's a really interesting topic to even discuss, like what is art here. Like, I think that's a totally fair discussion point. But I want to highlight one thing. So during COVID, we watched physical art. There's everybody's aware that there's tons of art fairs around the world, or that art galleries shipping work everywhere. So the prices of shipping containers suddenly like doubled or tripled during COVID, and it's really, I mean, and so we've seen art galleries scale back from the number of art fairs that they participate in. We've seen really interesting deals with major art galleries buying their shipping lines with, um, uh, like Crozier is a famous New York shipping country, and some big art galleries struck deals with Crozier to solidify their shipping lanes for various big shipping lanes to Europe. Like the cost of shipping is changing, so I think like that will continue to drive more and more art displays towards digital displays. You're seeing this. I think there was a I this is I'm like I hate to cite the New York Times, but like there was a New York Times article like a week or two ago that was all about this like intersection point of major art museums in the face of like the success of immersive art experiences like the Van Gogh experience or whatever. There's quite a number of them, and just this realization that the cost or even audience experience of physical artwork is a little bit different than it used to be. Now, that's probably a symptom of money changing, not like so much as a reality. So, like, I'm not saying that people should not make physical artwork. I myself make physical artwork, and I also just don't think we should be like paranoid about like digital art displacing physical art. But yeah, I mean, maybe that's a roundabout way of getting towards the ordinals discussion. But I don't think it's as big of an issue as it was initially assessed to be. I don't think it is destructive towards Bitcoin. I do think that people were very justified to have some reservations about certain types of NFT related projects being ported over to Bitcoin, and like the concern that type of behavior that's being brought to Bitcoin is like both a way of people losing money, or I mean, there's a number of like first wave ordinals questions that I think people are totally justified to voice concern about. I do think that there is a second wave emerging here that is really, really fascinating, and it has to do with more on-chain responsive artworks being created. I do think this is going to open the door to some really fascinating things. I am not an expert on this, but I do, and I'm not even going to put him on blast. But I would say that Rax is in the audience right now. He made a projective ordinals piece that was really fascinating for B24. This piece was the movements of the works were uh, related to on-chain shifts within Bitcoin that shifted the visualizations. So this sort of live signage component or real-time shifting of the visuals is an interesting narrative that is part of this sort of second wave of ordinals content. And I would just also say that, like, look, a good friend of mine is Aaron Redwing that runs the Hell Money podcast, and she's fucking based Bitcoiner. Like the topics that are being discussed on that show are extremely high level, and there's a number of ordinals people that I have learned a ton about, and I think that their position in this community is of value, and yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but those are a few random thoughts.
Oh, it's interesting. Because the wonderful thing about this show is that and indeed Bitcoin is the pure diverse amount of artists that we have, because it's a decentralized art movement. We're people from Wales, people from Chile, people from America, wherever. We've got Spain in the audience, we've got England, Canada. I can just see. Just going to Germany and probably more. So we have all these different opinions, and I just find it fascinating to understand all different backgrounds, concepts, and also how Bitcoin art is shaping, because it is this kind of in this embryonic stage still. I mean,
Sure.
it's really easy for us, here to, we've been to I've been to about 3 or 4 now Bitcoin conferences, shown my art around, etc. And it feels like I've been in it for ages. It's in a good way, and I've had I had such amazing experiences. I've met some best friends I have in the world at Bitcoin art conferences and meetups, etc. But it's always tough. It's always in the back of my head. I've been doing this for like 3, 4 years, and I'm sure it's the same with you. And it's probably felt even longer for you as well, Dennis, because of the amount of effort and planning and everything that goes into each and every show that you put on. So, where do you think Where do you think Bitcoin art is going? I mean, that's a very sweeping statement, but like, where are we at right now, Dennis? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
and first of all, real quick, Rebel and Flo, should also say, like, look, our conference has had counterparty artists participating for a number of years. Like, that is a community that I have a great deal of love for, and also just like the amount of mimetic powers that have came out of that group is really phenomenal. Like, I think they have their finger on one of the most pertinent artistic avenues. So I obviously huge hat tip to counterparty folks, and yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Like, there's a couple like real traditional art world artists that have really latched on to this meme community. There's a New York gallery called The Hole that just had an opening of an artist named Christine Wong that some people might know, but she is like basically doing what Pepinardo's doing in terms of like meme art. And yeah, so it's just interesting. I think there's going to be really fascinating sort of bridge moments for a number of artists as they like pop up in different areas, and very excited to see more of that. But yeah, I think this where we're at in Bitcoin and Bitcoin art is an interesting topic. I think this reminds me of like early internet art. So like eventually it's just all going to be Bitcoin art. Like I think like your show is going to be fucked in about 1 year because everything is going to be Bitcoin art, and then you're just going to have to just sit around and be like, oh fuck, yeah, what are we going to talk about? Like, yeah, it's really going to put you in a shit place, Rebel. So be prepared for that. But yeah, no, I mean, AOL Messenger, shit like that. Like eventually it was just all internet art. Like, and the Bitcoin is a medium of exchange. Yes, the artwork can exist as data on it, but yeah, I think eventually it'll be ubiquitous. So I think we've talked about that before, and I think that's probably true.
thanks, Dennis. It's thanks for that heads up there.
Yeah, you're fucked. You're fucked, dude.
This is it now. Well, actually, just being on this show is the amount of Bitcoin artists that are out there already. Is the ones I'm just discovering being on this show and the incredible new art, but it just seems like there's more and more every day. And I think going on to that, I think what you said around like Pepinardo, bridging the gaps between the meme universe and fine art, even like other touch points within the kind of Bitcoin community now, you do feel like this culture shift is happening. To give you another example, not in Bitcoin art such, but in podcasting. So Peter McCormack from the What Bitcoin Did podcast has now actually stopped stop that podcast, the What Bitcoin Did, and he's actually now converting into the McCormack show, from what I understand. The reason behind that is simply because he believes now that there's going to be a huge shift in culture, that he wants to stay ahead of the curve, and capture Bitcoin culture is going to go into mainstream, and it's going to require Bitcoiners as well as traditional mainstream people to kind of disseminate what is going on as these two cultures meld into one and become one. So I'm finding it really fascinating now to kind of you're right, we have talked about it before in terms of Bitcoin culture developing, changing, but it's kind of happening in front of our eyes now. And I know at the conferences now we're getting artists, traditional artists, I say traditional artists, art from traditional backgrounds, if you want to call it that, now participating in the conference art scene. So it is getting to that point where these two worlds are kind of converging, perhaps sooner than we think. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you could also throw in just like all the political intersection point as being another facet of these worlds coming together. Um, yeah, I think that the Peter McCormack news was really fascinating, and I totally could see how he could get to that understanding. Yeah, what the hell was the question? I don't know.
Well, mate, if it also at the same time, I was going to say if the art of freedom is completely fucked as well, then Bitcoin art curator as well.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Hey, I would. You know what would be interesting? I do see Fiat Fire is in the audience here. I'm going to summarize a performance he did not too long ago because I think this audience might find it interesting and may not be aware of it. So Fiat Fire did a performance in Austin where he walked into a bank, and you know, I mean, he could hop up here and tell this story himself. Actually, if he doesn't want me to say it for him. Actually, let's do that. I think it would be a better story here. Could we make him, if he's in a place where he can come up on stage? Fiat Fire, would you tell the story of that performance? I think it may actually be pertinent to this conversation in terms of like how these worlds come together, and yeah, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let him talk.
Well, you caught me a little bit off guard there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you great. And would you mind explaining to this audience that performance and your intention behind that performance?
Sure. So, yeah, when I was in Austin, for a long time, I think just in kind of immersing myself in Bitcoin and thinking about a lot of the kind of economic and monetary issues, I've always had this idea of kind of interacting with um, some of the ops in the financial world, one of them being banks. There's, I think a lot of artists here do a lot of things with, I'm thinking of, I'm thinking of some of the paintings that I've seen, like of banks on fire and things like that. Um, I've always been a big fan of um, any movies that had, heists or bank robberies. So I had planned this kind of piece of performance art where I um, went into a bank. It was um, it was a branch of Bank of America in Austin. I had gone there for consensus, and just as a side note, I'd gotten into a bike accident in consensus and spent like a week in the hospital, so I missed the whole conference. But I still wanted to do the piece of performance art, and what it was is that I walked into the bank and I had um, 50 consecutively numbered $1 bills from 2009. And 2009 is, of course, this really important year in Bitcoin. It followed the banking crisis in late 2008. Um, on the monetary side, quantitative easing starts, and Satoshi, of course, starts to mint blocks. And on all of these $1 bills, I had written, just with some markers, I wrote "burn your money." And so I went into the bank. I was going to throw all of these into the lobby of the bank where there were customers, where there were normies, there doing their transactions, where there were bank tellers who, part of the economic system who, may not be really thinking about Bitcoin or, what's going on in this part of the world. And from the accident, my mouth was also wired shut. I had broken my jaw in several places, so my mouth was wired shut. And so I had a phone kind of like, I had my cell phone and I had already recorded this uh, text to voice message. So I just held up the phone and it kind of, that kind of Stephen Hawking type message. And um, it said something like, "This is not your money. This is not my money. So let's burn it and start with something new." And I just the bank teller when I went up to the teller and said this, it was just kind of weird. It was just kind of like, this moment of us both freezing there. And I really I saw her kind of reach under the cabinet. I think that she really reached under the cabinet. And so when that happened, I turned around and I threw all of the bills, into the people waiting in line there. And I was actually this was my last day in Austin, so I had taken an Uber from the hospital to the airport, and I had him stop at the bank on the way. And so after I threw the bills out, I left the bank. I had my jacket on that said Fiat Fire in the back, and it was kind of like a getaway. I got in the car and I went away. As I was leaving, somebody said, "Who is that guy?" And another guy said, "Don't touch anything. You don't know who that guy is." And so the art is I hired somebody through Craigslist to come and video this on their uh, cell phone, which is kind of a little bit shaky, but I think I can work with it. But the art piece of this is before I threw those bills with "Burn Your Money" on it. I had photographed all of those. And so that though, taking those and making them into ordinals and doing some, compression to get these like, 4 meg files down to size. But that's going to be a project that'll probably be starting next week, I think, on Gamma. Those images of the $2009 bills will be put onto um, Block 9 2009 sets. And so the first collection will be of 50 of those. And then, like any bank robber performing a heist, I've actually already done another one. So that one was in Austin, and I recently went to a bank, a Wells Fargo in Montgomery, Alabama. And the theme of that one is freedom, not fiat. So those are written on. And for that one, there was actually a security guard, and I had to kind of do a little bit of evasive maneuvers to avoid the security guard. But
Now,
yeah,
Fiat
so that's
Fire,
yeah.
Fiat Fire. I don't want you to get shot doing this. So I appreciate the giant balls you have for having done this already, and I love the performance component. Like you, the reaction of people in those moments. I've been a part of a couple like sort of live happenings where a performance is occurring and people don't know it, and it's pretty
Yeah.
wild. It's pretty wild experience. Yeah, so I don't know. I do think this speaks to that sort of like shock intersection moment that Rebel was talking about in terms of how these worlds interact with one another. And I mean, some people, do you really think that, like, I'm curious, do you think that there is like so people experience the shock of that moment. Like, do you think that they go home and start to consider this on a larger level, or like how does a person experiencing that, how can it shift their awareness?
Yeah, I think there is that moment, and when I was thinking about this, it sounded a lot easier than it actually was, and what I kind of knew but didn't realize until I got there is that when you go into a bank, um, everybody has these things in their pocket or checkbooks or cash that's representing their work or their lives, their security. And so for whatever reason, it's sort of like when you go into a bank, it's like going into a library. People, there's kind of hushed tones and there's a little bit of a seriousness to it. So that this action kind of, burst the bubble of that. And then the idea was that by seeing, these bills kind of float to the floor and somebody picks them up and they see on the back of my jacket, I have, painted on there Fiat Fire, is that maybe somebody would go and look that up online, would go and, put Fiat Fire online
Yeah, good point.
and kind of connect the dots there between the bank, the burn your money, and then maybe they start to do that search and just ask questions. Like, I'm not trying to, necessarily get somebody onboarded with a wallet and buying Bitcoin. Just kind of wanted to start that conversation first of, asking questions about the financial system that you are in, you know, get them to that point, and then, hopefully they'll go all the way.
Well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate you. I know you and I talk a fair amount, so but thank you for hopping up here to share the story of this, because I think that's just another art making component, that how performance can be captured in general is like something I've been thinking a lot. I know I've had this conversation with Hitomi. She has some ideas about some almost performance like elements that'll take place at a future event as well. But like, I mean, I really, I am kind of blown away by that particular performance. So thank you for sharing it. I don't want to take too much time away from. I know Rebel and Flo have a particular pacing of this show, but you know, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
So just to come in there, my mind has been blown there, and I'm sure everyone listening as well has just gone, "Wow, that's insane." So what I'd love to do, because we are almost out of time for today's session, here with Dennis, is Fiat Fire. I would like to invite you on the show at some point to just discuss that incredible bomb you just dropped there. So that would be incredible, and talk about your story. And so I'd love to have you on there. That's first and foremost. And secondly, that I guess the point there is that's insane that now Bitcoin art is actually becoming reality, front and center, and people are experiencing it firsthand, whether they like it or not. So, and I absolutely love that, and I'd love to see more of that, and hear a lot more of your thoughts and creative processes as well.
Rebel, in some sense, it makes perfect sense. I mean, like for years, Bitcoiners have been having this conversation about like what this collision of worlds looks like, and like this performance is indicative of like one of those like very chaotic collision moments, like that we will be seeing more of in our lifetime. So yeah, I don't know.
I agree, and it's on literally on the stage, ironically set by the banks. So it's there front and center, and people experiencing it firsthand will then get it more than if they hear about it. And we say 3 touch points in Bitcoin, but if you get a touch point like fiat fire coming into your bank hand in your dollar bills and then being dodging the security guard, then I think that's going to have a lot of shock on you, whether you like it or not. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for highlighting that as well, Dennis. Dennis, we do have to go. Normally we keep this to around about an hour. Um, so I would also like to invite you back again, Dennis, because there's so much to talk about, and an hour isn't very long, to be perfectly honest with you. But just before we do head off, Dennis, is there anything else that you'd just like to mention very briefly at the end of this discussion here that we haven't talked about?
No, I would just say we're already doing planning for B25 Las Vegas. And I would just really encourage people to start planning accordingly. I know it's hard to plan that far in advance, but I really think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for artists, and really would like to get people back, but also just realize I think it's going to be a big stage for a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I got to be honest, this has been one hell of a roller coaster, chaotic journey into the world of Bitcoin art. So many different topics covered, and it's been an absolute joy. So I really appreciate your opinions, your values, and also your time as well, coming on here today to come and talk to us. Just before we go, Flo, if you'd like any words that you'd like to say, and also tell everyone who's on next week when I'm away.
Hey, yeah, no, thank you so much, Dennis, for being here, but also for all the work you do. I know it's not easy. You're working with artists, yeah, not easy, and I know we are always late. So thank you for your patience. Next week we'll have. Let me see 1 second. If Frederick, I don't know how to say that, but Frederick, who is building a comic, a very specific comic. It's a Bitcoiner comic, so I'm very happy about that next show. I'm so sorry, Rebel, you cannot be here with us. We will miss you so much next time.
You'll do perfectly fine without me, Flo. But I'm back in 2 weeks. Just want to say thank you last to everyone who's joined us here tonight for this discussion. Without you, the community doesn't work. And really appreciate your support and kind words as well for the show. If there's anything we can do to improve the show, please let us know. We've got a Telegram group, Art Freedom, or you can just DM me or Flo and we'll speak to you. We're kind of friendly, so that'd be lovely. And I think that's it. Thank you very much for joining the Art of Freedom. I hope you have an amazing creative week and go out there and make something awesome.